The Newsround on Off the Ball.
With Gillette, for an effortless finish to your day. New Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
This is News Talk.
Well, hello. Tuesday evening Off the Ball. We have lots to discuss. Katie Taylor, I think it's fair to say, has spent much of her life surpassing expectations. Billy Walsh had a front row seat across the years to many of her great achievements. On Saturday night, Billy was watching on helpless like the rest of us for maybe her greatest. So Billy Walsh is going to join us 7:30. Meanwhile, on the hurling front, it's amazing how a handshake is what lingers in the memory, but that's pretty much where we are after the weekend's hurling. Despite wins for Galway and Clare, we will talk to Tommy Welch at 8 o'clock, which should be interesting. Plus the All-Ireland champions taken out in the football. Conleth Gilligan will talk to us about Derry Tyrone, a first win over Tyrone since 2006 for Derry. Plus, busy football show, Villarreal, Liverpool. We have Dan McDonald here in studio. We have Adam Pope of BBC Leeds checking in as well. 53106, the text number. We are at Off the Ball on Twitter. Mick McCarthy here in studio. Hello.
Hi, Joe.
And Richie McCormack. Hello to you.
Evening, Joe. How are you?
That was quite the moment on Saturday morning at Madison Square Garden.
I thought you were going to talk about Georgie Kelly's goal for Rotherham on Saturday afternoon, which is almost equally as miraculous.
Sunday morning.
Yeah, I guess we'll talk about the boxing if you have to, Joe. God, it was amazing, wasn't it? Like, it's one of those fights where you have goosebumps before there's like even a punch thrown, and then the punches thrown only serve to add to the sense of occasion and the sense of brilliance and wonder at what you're actually watching unfold, because it was like, we very rarely get to see two fighters absolutely at the peak of their game, or two combatants or two teams who are like absolutely head-to-head peak of their powers going head-to-head, and that's what we got to see play out on Saturday night, and that's what made for the drama of it all, because like neither one of them were taking a step back, and how Katie managed to come through that round 5 and still kept coming forward and was coming out before Serrano before the start of each round. The mental toll that took on the Puerto Ricans should not be underestimated, but by God, what a great fight.
It's kind of interesting when Katie Taylor was standing between rounds initially. And so it seems, reading different pieces, that her calf injury over the last 8-9 months has been far more serious than we realise. So she admitted on an American podcast ahead of the fight, I hadn't quite seen it, but that for the Jennifer Hand fight and the Sharapova fight, September-December, respectively, she was fighting with a torn calf. So there was a degree of not sitting down, not letting the thing seize up between rounds. I would suspect then at a certain point in that fight, just sit the hell down. Because
you need this minute.
Yeah, let's just take this minute. I'm looking forward to having Billy Walsh on, because he would never have been, I suspect, ringside, largely because of the amateurism of Taylor's early fights. He would never have seen her take that punishment.
No, absolutely not.
And
I don't
Eric
think she's
Donovan
ever taken that kind of punishment, to be honest.
And Eric Donovan previewed the fight for us brilliantly on Wednesday last week, and he was certainly making the point that, look, Taylor needs to fight like an amateur here. She needs to be in, she needs to keep moving. She can't afford to take the concussive power. That phrase sticks in your head when you hear it. He can't take Serrano's concussive, she can't take Serrano's concussive power, is what he said. And so when the fourth round started to edge in that more concussive blow territory, I was thinking, let's just get back to being an amateur again. And then when it was being unloaded in round 5, I thought, well, she's done here. So I suspect Billy thought the same. I suspect lots of us did. I wondered if the referee was going to stop the fight at that stage. I don't know what allows you to come through a round like round 5. Is that conditioning? Does it go beyond that into your spirit and your psyche? But these are the kind of things that were crossing all our minds. Billy Walsh, I'm sure, included. So, Eric said we had Eric on the show on Sunday, Donovan. He said, like, great fights have chapters. Yeah. This had 3 acts, this fight. And Act 2 was no fun. But it made Act 3 all the more remarkable.
But you know what I was thinking during Act 3, say, and especially in the aftermath?
Yeah.
Do you remember the conversation we had last week? And I think it was you pointing to Steve Bunce about something special. But my thing was, like, there is a bit in the Irish psyche almost of us expecting the worst in some ways, like believing in somebody to a point. And that Katie, I think, has probably brought us higher than anyone else. But at the same time, there was this fear that she's never faced anybody like this before. And when we were in that fifth round in particular, there was this feeling of, we've seen this before. We know how this ends. Not with Katie Taylor, but with so many other Irish fighters that we've been invested in that just went to that extra level that they weren't good enough for. And Katie's the only one that flipped that in the script. Now, I mean, actually, sorry, there is Bernard Dunn against Cordoba. Definitely, you know, I don't think that fight was at the level of what we're talking about here. But at the same time, he did turn that around that night. But other than that, I feel like that was where Katie Taylor puts herself above. In so many ways, she's above it already. But in, you know, that particular one is like, this is somebody, a sports person, that we have to believe at the highest level. And last week, we questioned it. Of course we did. Everybody in the world did. We didn't know how it was going to be. But that's why this is such a big deal. Because more than ever before, she proved that she could come through the lowest of the low. I mean, I can't remember a fighter coming back from such a bad... And to come back and box so brilliantly. That's the other thing. She came back and didn't just like survive for the rest of the fight. Yeah. She came back like the 7th round was a thing of beauty. That's what like that was boxing as the sweetest of sciences. You know, like that was what it was. So yeah, like I don't know. I just think you don't like these conversations to be reduced to simplistic things like pride and emotion, but I can't. That's the overwhelming feeling. On Sunday morning, I was listening to you talking with Ronan and with Eric on the show on Sunday, and it was just the whole time I was just like beaming with this pride of what Katie Taylor has given us, you know.
Yeah,
it's I know it can sound simplistic, but that's ultimately what it is.
Yeah, we should press on because we do want to make time for Billy Walsh, who's going to join us this hour, and you know his opinion of Taylor couldn't have been higher, you suspect, in advance of Saturday, but somehow it's probably gone up another notch or two. So Richie, we're starting the news round. It is as ever with thanks to Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. And there is Champions League this evening.
Oh yes, and no small matter as well over in Spain, where it has been teeming down in Villarreal ahead of tonight's Champions League semi-final second leg. Liverpool taking a 2-0 first leg advantage into that game as they hope to reach a third final in 5 seasons. We'll start with the hosts tonight. One major return for them. Geronimo Rulli starts in goal, that familiar back four. Then Juan Foyth, Raul Albiol, Pau Torres and Pervis Estupiñán. In midfield, then Giovanni Lo Celso retreats somewhat to the right-hand side of that midfield. Daniel Parejo and Etienne Capoue in the centre. Francis Coughlin's on the left. The returning Gerard Moreno is up front. 13 goals for him. He missed the first leg so far this season. And Boulaye Dia partners him up top. For Liverpool, slightly more familiar look to them. 4-3-3 as ever. Alisson starts in goal. Back four of Trent Alexander-Arnold. Ibrahima Konate, of course, has been a fixture in Europe so far this season. Virgil van Dijk and Andy Robertson complete that defence. Then in midfield, it's anchored by Fabinho, and either side of him are Naby Keita and Thiago Alcantara. And up top, it's Mo Salah, Sadio Mane and Diogo Jota. Liverpool boss Jurgen Klopp says the atmosphere with which they contended on Saturday will stand them in good stead tonight.
A good example was Newcastle now, because the crowd was obviously very passionate as well, but we didn't let it happen, which was the biggest quality of this game. It was now not a show of football brilliance or whatever. We had our moments. We of course could have scored more goals, but how clear cut we just the performance was. That was incredible, and that's what we have to be. Yes, emotional. Yes, being there, really ready to play the best game ever, but knowing it will not just happen in our moments. We want to press here and there, but the outplayers still can happen. So then we had that. Suffering doesn't mean you suffer for long. It means you suffer and react, and that's what we have to do.
They are at this extraordinary point in their respective seasons. Liverpool in particular, I suppose, because they're fighting on 3 fronts still and have fought on a 4th, where even for these absolutely enormous games, Champions League semi-final, he's in rotation mode because he just has to. If they're going to keep going and get all the way to the end of the season without limping, they just have to do it. Because even against Newcastle, when you're watching them bring in Milner and Gomez and Jota, and you're leaving out Salah, Alexander-Arnold, Thiago, for what was a very tricky game. Newcastle 10 wins in 14. And now this evening, it's Champions League semi-final, second leg, and he's leaving out Henderson, he's leaving out Diaz, who I think has supplanted Jota, and even Man City are leaving out De Bruyne at the weekend. Ellen Road screamed on Saturday night in advance. Desperate leads, home crowd, evening kick-off. You've got De Bruyne on the bench, Mahrez on the bench, Silva on the bench. I know City have a hell of a squad, especially at that end of the field, but everything about it screamed ambush. Yeah. And they would have known that. And they still, Guardiola and Klopp are still having to rest frontline players for games they really would rather have them play.
Yeah, absolutely, of course. Yeah, but it just shows you it's the squad depth, and also It's what sets these two teams apart, and they did it obviously in 2019, where it was unheard of for teams to go and win every you thought there'll be twists and turns to come, and there never was. They just kept winning all the games, and they can do this, like they're going to meet in the Champions League final. I'm almost sure. Liverpool are probably going to go and win the FA Cup beat Chelsea in the final, and they're probably going to win all their games in the Premier League, and City are going to win by a point. Yeah. And that shouldn't be us. Like, we shouldn't be suggesting that and sound sane. It's like it shouldn't be able to happen, and it's more than likely going to happen. And that's because you're right. I got a bit of a fright when I saw the Liverpool team on Saturday, but they were well good enough. Those players that they're bringing in are really, really good players that would be on nearly any other team.
The last time I remember this kind of rotation for games this big does go back to the treble year, when in FA Cup finals you had Sheringham and Solskjaer starting, and Nicky Butt was their only central midfielder left for the Champions League, so he wasn't even playing. I think Beckham might have been in central midfield against Newcastle. But regardless, there was incredible rotation in the last month. And I think City and Liverpool have reached that point where it just has to happen.
It felt back then, though, it was more injuries and suspensions based. Now, maybe in the cup final there needed to be, because obviously they had that massive game in the last Premier League game of the season against Spurs, and they had the Champions League final. But it did, Scholes and Keane were obviously suspended in the there was injuries as well.
Keane got injured in the FA Cup final.
Did he?
He had to go off injured. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
His ankle was trampled. I think it might have been Gary Speed, the late Gary Speed, who injured him in the final from memory. But certainly, York and Cole, you're rested. Nicky Butt, we're not risking you. It's an FA Cup final, and it'd be nice to win the treble. You don't lose that FA Cup final. But that's where Liverpool and City are now. So Kenny Cunningham in studio tomorrow for Real Madrid against Manchester City.
Having that four as interchangeable as they were, though, was kind of quite famous at the time, that you could have Sheringham, Solskjaer, York and Cole, and not really lose anything no matter who you played.
Yeah. That was a first.
Liverpool are getting to that point now, and that's, you talk about where we, just a couple of years ago when they were as good as they are now, that was certainly their issue. If somebody got injured, Divock Origi was winning Champions Leagues for them.
Yeah. And winning them well.
No, absolutely. That wasn't meant to be a dig at Divock Origi, but he's not going to be picked on a night like this. Whereas now we can say, Jota, Firmino, pop on in.
So, Richie, more football this evening?
Yeah, huge match in the race for championship promotion is underway at the Vitality. Bournemouth can seal a return to the Premier League tonight if they beat Nottingham Forest. However, a Forest win would take them above their opponents on goal difference, with one match of the season remaining. 15 minutes played at the Vitality. Still Bournemouth 0, Nottingham Forest 0. Sticking with Bournemouth, and their midfielder David Brooks says he's delighted after successfully completing treatment for cancer. The 24-year-old was diagnosed with stage 2 Hodgkin lymphoma in October, but says he's excited to start the journey back to full fitness and playing again after being given the all clear. So hell of a boost for Bournemouth heading into that game. Scoreless it remains.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Croke Park talk is real, is it?
Seemingly so, yeah. A rematch between world champion Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano is being planned, at least, for Croke Park in October. That's according to The Independent, which reports that Taylor's manager Brian Peters is back in Ireland working on the project. Promoter Eddie Hearn is backing the bout at GEA HQ, but getting streaming network DAZN on board will be crucial in making the fight viable. Taylor, of course, beat Serrano in New York on Saturday night to retain the undisputed lightweight championship.
Billy Walsh joining us in a couple of moments. So we have interesting news. Stephen Bradley, it looks now like, is heading to Lincoln. They've made a formal approach. You don't do that unless you're fairly confident, I would say.
And there seems to be interest heading in the opposite direction as well. Of course, there was interest, it seems, last season from MK Dons, but this seems a little bit more solid this time round. Lincoln, as you mentioned, making that formal approach for Bradley. The English League One club sacked Michael Appleton at the weekend following a 17th place finish in League One. Should Bradley decide he wants to leave Tala after 6 seasons, then Lincoln would, of course, have to stump up for a compensation package. It seems his assistants Glenn Cronin and Director of Football Steve McPhail could also follow suit and head over to the League One club.
Oof, wow.
Ouch.
Wow, that's actually a big add-on there to that story, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'd be interested to hear what Dan has to say about this, obviously, because Bradley and himself and what happens to Rovers is very interesting, but also who comes in for Rovers and how they manage that. Do they go for a big name? Do they go for a League of Ireland stalwart type, or do they try and do what they did with Stephen Bradley?
Have we ruled out Roy Keane?
No, but we haven't ruled out Robbie Keane, who was mentioned.
God, I'd love that.
It came up in conversation in the office, not necessarily with there's just whispers, And I'd be interested to know if Dan, if those whispers have reached Dan, then we could be in for a conversation. So we'll find out after 9 o'clock.
Robbie v. Duffer. Tell me this.
For the battle for 7th.
Yeah. We have Tommy Welch on the way. You're a hurling man, Michael, to your core. What did you make of Handshake Gate?
Oh, I was deeply uncomfortable watching Handshake Gate. It was... We talked last week. We previewed their handshake. It was like this little joke that we had.
I felt almost silly last week saying to Eddie Brennan, we'll be keeping a close eye on the handshake at full time. It'd be fine. It'll be a non-event.
Absolutely.
It was the complete and total opposite of a non-event.
And look, I mean, we could get into... Look, we're going to talk about it and it's interesting. And the truth is nobody knows what really happened or whether it was even much of an incident or it's something that's been completely blown out of proportion. But you look at that close-up of Brian Cody's face after he pulls him back. It's not nice.
No.
You know, I'm trying not to go too far on this because, as I said, we don't know. But like that's the best I can say. It's like really unpleasant or something. So, you know, you hope that it was just a momentary thing and things have passed. But, you know, given what's happened in Henry Shefflin's life in the last couple of months and given what... you know, all the history between those two, I really didn't like it, I have to say. I just found it very disappointing.
Yeah, I'm the same.
Yeah.
So I think a huge part of it, to be fair, is we've just lost the match in the most heartbreaking and potentially unfair manner in Cody's view, and he's making his way towards the referee is what's happening. And Shefflin calls after him, and that's when it happens. So look, if it's a 15-point win, then I think you get a very different Cody. Also, people are saying, well, is this, Cody disagrees with Shefflin going to another county on some principled kind of a stance. This is, goes against the grain of GA ethos. That is absolutely not it. I mean, when Eddie Brennan of Laois went up against Cody, it was warm handshake, warm smile. So this isn't a...
Going to Laois isn't trying to usurp Kilkenny, though. Going to Galway, their biggest rivals in Leinster, is a big, big move.
No, I accept that, but I'm just saying this isn't a principled, thou shalt not go to another county as a Kilkenny man.
I hope not, because that would make it...
But it can't be if he's friendly towards Brennan when Brennan's the Laois manager. So I'm saying it's not
Again,
that.
Laois aren't a... Laois...
Yeah, so that makes it a more... you're challenging me kind of a thing. So it's not some principled, ethical kind of...
Right, as an overall sense. Yeah, okay, I understand what you're saying.
Because I've seen it suggested, look, a GA man like Cody doesn't think much of someone going to manage another county. It's not that. Now, going to manage a rival...
Yeah, a real rival. Yeah,
that's different.
Knock you off your perch.
And the other thing out there, and it's been said by various people who would know, is that Shefflin was approached a couple of times to join the ticket and didn't. So maybe he sees that as something of a challenge. Yeah. But I'm totally with you. If you can't park all that, given their relationship, what they've been through, then I don't know. And it was quite interesting that I thought it was cold at first glance on the live coverage, which didn't have the full handshake, bizarrely, by the way.
Yeah.
And so even then I kind of half quipped on Twitter, geez, this makes Cian McCarthy look like a love-in. But then a few hours later, when you see it on the Sunday game highlights... In
fairness to the Sunday game, you could criticise them for a lot, but they did the handshake justice.
Bloody right they did. Yeah. And I suppose it's the bit where Shefflin goes after him and then he's gone. So it's cold. You're like, oh, God, that's a pity. It's cold. Yeah. Fair enough. But then Shefflin's body is gone. And then you can see he realises my hand is not moved.
Yeah.
And there's
a tightening.
There's a flicker of surprise and a kind of raised eyebrow, and he quick look behind him. And then slow motion, admittedly. But the look,
I was saying,
is it's withering, it's hostile, and I, to your point about, geez, are we all, are we imagining things? Are we, reading too much into it? Of course we are. There's a degree of that, but, you don't need to look any further than Henry Shefflin
for the surprise,
looking back afterwards and trying to process what he's just witnessed and going, what the hell is this?
Yeah. I've just played out the après match analysis of this in my head as you've been talking there, like the pausing of each frame, the circling of the eyes, the hold it there, the look at that look, Bill, look at that look, that's meanness, that's withering. Do
you disagree?
I don't know. I find the whole thing ugly's probably too far. But it's as you mentioned there, it's not nice. It's never pleasant to see people who have been in such trenches as they together and achieved what they have achieved together, to, as is evidenced by that handshake, fall so far apart. Like that's ugly. That's horrible when it happens in a family sense. It's horrible when it happens to friends. It's horrible when it happens to teammates. And you always kind of figure that those two, because they're such, I guess, such even keel characters, that you don't think that either of them has it in it to be vengeful or to be,
Cody even keeled?
But in terms of manner, in terms of mood, like you'll never see him. We'll rarely see him red raw in the face and yelling and screaming, or going off at somebody. So to think what's behind that.
Yeah, funny. I
think what's behind that.
I wouldn't describe him as even killed at all.
No, I've seen him lose the head quite a number of times. I think we could probably talk about this again, but like, there's an element of Brian Cody that's been praised for many years as one of his defining qualities is his ruthlessness. Mm-hmm. And I don't know whether, I understand why that is praiseworthy and why it's, led to so much success. But at some point, that has to go past the point of being worthy and of being acceptable.
Yeah.
And I think that, like, at some point is like, what are you being so ruthless for? What is it all for? Is it to win 11 All-Irelands and be the greatest manager of all time in the greatest county of all time and so on? I don't think it's personal accolades for Brian Cody. I think it's about being on top and being the best, and I understand that. But it's still only a game. And I hate to say that as sports show. It's like, it's not as if we don't take sports seriously, but it bloody well is. That's a human being that you've had a relationship with for 15 years. That something has changed in your relationship because he's gone to manage another team.
Well, I don't know what it is. And look,
of course we don't know what it is. That's again, there is a little bit of us projecting on what that is. I did think as well, though, I thought that there was an element of Cody thinking that he was being disrespected by Henry, that they shook hands. It was cold, but it wasn't unacceptable. As you mentioned, that was what you had seen, and he said,
live
"Oh,
coverage,
it was a cold."
yeah.
And then Henry kind of turned away, and I was wondering, was Cody like looking back at him and gave him that look as if to say, I wasn't done with you here, kid.
Yeah.
As in, like, who are you to turn away from me? You should.
That crossed my mind.
You never
as well.
said thank you. You never said well done. You never said anything. I wonder, was it something as simple as that? There was a momentary thing from Cody where he went, "Who the hell do you think you are?" And that mightn't have been premeditated. It mightn't have been anything. And by the time he got into the dressing room, they, for all we know, they could have had a pint together.
I know. It did cross my mind as well, to be fair to Cody, that he thought, hang on, you're being called with me here too. Like, come back here a second.
That's it, yeah.
So there's a bit of that as well. And of course, I accept before anyone points it out, we're all talking about this too much. But it's funny.
Can we talk about more?
Sorry, but at the same time, everyone's like, geez, we're talking about this way too much. What was anyone talking about on Sunday? If you're into sport, what were you talking about?
Yeah,
it was
absolutely.
that. What did you think of it? What was your reading it? Like, and anyone who's saying, move on, they were talking about it as well. Richie, sorry, we're running out of time. But we got to talk Ronnie. This was amidst a weekend of headline sport, which kind of dwarfs this, understandably. The snooker was so good.
Yeah, I still contend that there's possibly no more fascinating a character in world sport than Ronnie O'Sullivan. You could dissect that man mentally every which way and still not get to what makes him tick. But he did claim a record-equaling 7th world snooker title yesterday. The Rocket withstood a spirited comeback from Judd Trump earlier in the day to complete an 18-13 victory at the Crucible. O'Sullivan cut an emotional figure after the win and was asked for the reason behind that by Rob Walker.
I've been quite emotional the last 3 or 4 years, to be honest with you. I think as you get older, you start to. But no, I don't know. It's just I don't know. It's just how it is, isn't it? I don't know. I just weird, mate.
Greatest moment of your career?
One of. Yeah, I'd have to say probably the greatest, probably the best win of my career. I'd have to say that, because I felt like I played all right. I felt like I played all right from start to finish, and I had to fight for it. And it's marvellous moment. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was so. Did you watch much snooker?
Oh yeah, I watched a bit of it.
Deep dived in. I thought it was
the
just
semi-final
fantastic.
was unbelievable.
Yeah, it really is on the comeback. I don't know why, because it's always been available to me.
And it's all the same lads that you've been watching for years.
But it was amazing. Trump was so poor in the first session, and it was almost over. And then when he rallied on yesterday, God,
long weekend, Joe.
Yeah, yesterday when he rallied and made the evening session, suddenly very live again. It was amazing. And then, Ronnie comes through. Trump's technique I'd never fully noted before.
No, me neither.
Explained
actually,
it. Like,
I've seen him win a world title actually, but then I couldn't stop seeing it.
Same.
Yeah.
So whereby he starts by aiming at the left of the, or is it the right? Yeah, the right. He's a lefty. At the right of the ball, and then on the strike, he moves back to the centre. So there's all kinds of movement going on there, which doesn't make sense. But he tried to straighten it up before, they were saying, and it ruined his game, so he couldn't. So he comes back. Ronnie comes through. It's an amazing moment. He joins Hendry. Hendry on commentary is so gracious, and he's saying, like, I'm honoured just to be on 7 with him, which is an amazingly classy thing to say. And then Ronnie O'Sullivan grabs Judd Trump and is whispering in his ear for, I would say, coming on 2 minutes. It just wouldn't end.
So strange. Because he did it and you're thinking, this is a long hug.
Yeah.
And you thought that. And then a minute and a half passed.
Yeah.
And after you thought this is a long hug, and you're just kind of going, what is going on here? This is like really, really. And you're kind of thinking, Ronnie's such a strange character. You're thinking, is he doing this for a laugh? Like,
who knows? Now my 3 that I want to know what was said: Greg Norman and Nick Faldo, 96 Masters.
Yeah.
Ronnie and Judd Trump, Bill Murray, Scarlett Johansson. They're my 3. Richie. It was pretty impressive, though. I mean, he said afterwards, you know, what's it like to be on 7 with Hendry, and you know, are you happy to share with Hendry? And he said, I am for 1 year. So he's gunning for 8. He's odds on for 8, I think.
I wouldn't put it past him to win 10. That man can keep going as long as he wants to keep going. Like I say, one of, if not the most fascinating figures in world sport, just for the sheer fact that you will never, ever, ever understand what makes him tick. The only thing that you can appreciate is that he's genuinely the best to ever pick up a cue, and I don't think that's in dispute anymore. I don't think the numbers even matter anymore. How many world championships? He is just a phenom. It's a joy to watch him play. It has been since day one, and you will tune in just to see what he does. And it's very few people across any sport have that kind of magnetism to just make you want to watch them. They don't even have to do it. And he could be sitting in the chair waiting for his next shot. Yeah, you're watching him because he's just that magnetic and that good. And when he does get to the table, he can do some special things.
It's amazingly his 30th World Championship. You know, it's like snooker, like his time goes by so slowly in snooker. Like it's amazing. But he's won 7 titles. He's only lost 1 final. And that was for his 3 in a row in 2014, maybe, correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah. But like, and he had a really good performance there. So once he gets to the final, he's lost a good few semis, and some of them have been classics. Yeah. Like he should have more than 7 realistically, you know, in a weird way. But once he gets to the final, I think that says everything about someone as well, you know.
He's amazing. I remember it was a gimmick when he started playing left-handed, and these days he just switches seamlessly as the shot requires. Yeah. Sometimes breaks off with his left hand.
I noticed that a few times, yeah.
Amazing. We are out of time. Richie McCormack, thank you very much.
Nice and lads.
Mick McCarthy, thank you.
Cheers, guys.